When I first met Alex, it seemed to me that I had found a kindred spirit. It was in university, during our freshman year. I remember how he approached me in the cafeteria with that easy smile and said, "Hey, I'm Alex. Looks like we'll be sitting together in history class." I nodded, not expecting this acquaintance to grow into something more. From the first minutes, we started talking about everything: favorite movies, music, even childhood memories. It felt like we understood each other without extra words. A few weeks later, we were spending almost all our free time together. Lab work, projects, parties, study groups. Alex was everywhere. I felt like I had found a friend for life, someone to share joys and sorrows with. I remember our first joint trip out of town. We sat by the lake, discussing future plans. Alex talked about his dreams, and I shared my doubts about choosing a profession. That's when I first felt that I trusted him more than anyone else. But even in that moment, as we laughed at each other's jokes, I noticed small oddities. Alex rarely spoke about his family. When I asked about his parents or childhood, he quickly changed the subject. Sometimes his gaze drifted off into the distance, and I sensed a slight tension he was trying to hide. I didn't pay much attention to it. We all have our secrets, I thought. But now, looking back, I realized that it was then that the first, almost imperceptible hints appeared that Alex was hiding much more than I could imagine. In university, we went through many small conflicts, arguments over projects, misunderstandings with other students, and every time Alex was there. He supported me in tough situations, sometimes even risking his own reputation. I believed he was a true pillar of support. But along with that, a feeling grew that he wasn't entirely open. He never left his phone unattended, quickly hid messages and calls, as if concealing something. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself. So what, the main thing is we're friends. Our conversations often touched on everyday life, future plans, and shared interests. We shared personal stories, sometimes to the point where it felt like we'd known each other our whole lives. And yet, the more I learned about him, the more I sensed there was some impenetrable boundary he wouldn't let me cross. Over the years, our friendship became almost like family. I invited him over, he came to my place. We celebrated birthdays, won contests together, argued about favorite TV shows. But sometimes, late in the evening, when we sat together and laughed, I caught something strange in his eyes, as if part of his life remained closed off to me. I couldn't call it anxiety, more like a slight unease that I chalked up to my imagination. Alex was the perfect friend. He supported me, listened, never judged. And that's why the thought that he might be hiding something seemed ridiculous. But as often happens, those we consider the closest are capable of keeping secrets that can destroy trust. I didn't know yet that soon I would learn Alex was hiding his criminal past. After we had spent almost 2 years together in university, my friendship with Alex turned into something more than just hanging out. We became each other's support, sharing our deepest thoughts and dreams. But with each month, I caught myself more often thinking that something about him didn't add up. At first, it was little things. He never talked about his past, avoided questions about his parents and childhood. When I tried to touch on his family, Alex quickly changed the conversation. "Come on, let's not talk about sad stuff. Better discuss the project," he would say with a sly smile. I tried to convince myself that it was just personal space. We all have a right to secrets. But as time passed, I started noticing strange coincidences. One evening, while we were preparing a joint report in his room, I noticed an old envelope on the shelf labeled "Do Not Open." Curiosity got the better of me. Inside were some old papers clearly not meant for outsiders' eyes. I saw case numbers, dates, signatures that were unfamiliar to me. At first, I didn't even understand what it was. "Alex, what is this?" I asked, trying to act like it didn't bother me much. He jerked the envelope away and hid it behind his back. "Ah, those are old papers. Boring stuff, not your concern." I nodded, though inside me, a feeling of anxiety began to rise. His reaction was too sharp for it to be ordinary worry. Over time, similar episodes repeated. Alex never left his phone unsupervised, instantly hid notifications. Sometimes I saw him nervously react to calls from unknown numbers. He avoided contact with some people from his past and clearly hid details of his life. One evening, we were sitting in a cafe with mutual friends, and the conversation turned to old neighbors and school years. One acquaintance suddenly mentioned, "Remember how Alex was involved in that unpleasant police story?" I felt my heart skip a beat. "What?" I managed, trying to keep a calm tone. The friend just shrugged and said something vague, as if not wanting to discuss the topic. Alex, meanwhile, smiled and tried to change the subject. Let's talk about vacations instead." I knew something was off, but I still couldn't believe my friend could be hiding something serious, dangerous. To check my suspicions, I started observing his behavior more closely. I noticed that Alex often disappeared for a couple of hours without explanation, sometimes coming home late with a tired look, but unwilling to say where he'd been. He never talked about friends from his old life, and any attempt to learn more irritated him. Internally, I tried to convince myself that these were just character quirks. Maybe he had his own problems, past mistakes he didn't want to talk about. But the anxiety grew every day, and I realized that the trust our friendship was built on was starting to crack. In those months, I started gathering small pieces of information, talking to mutual acquaintances, trying to learn more about Alex's past. And the more I learned, the more I realized his secret might be much more serious than I thought. It happened one evening when I stopped by Alex's to prepare a joint project. His room was neat, almost sterile, no papers, no items that could reveal anything personal. But something caught my eye this time. On the table lay a small folder labeled faintly in pen, "Personal Files." "Alex, what's this?" I asked, trying not to show my excitement. He tensed up instantly, but just smiled. "Just old papers, not your concern." My heart beat faster. I knew any mistake could destroy our friendship, but curiosity was stronger. While he was distracted by a call, I carefully opened the folder. Inside were documents I'd never heard of: court rulings, police reports, copies of indictments. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. On one page was his name, date of birth, and charges of fraud and theft of property. I reread it several times, not believing that the person I considered a friend could be involved in such things. I felt a storm of emotions rising inside: shock, anger, betrayal. Everything I knew about our Alex seemed like a lie. Memories of trust, joint trips, holidays, all suddenly took on a different shade. When he returned, I tried to act calm. "Alex, is this true?" I asked quietly, but with a tremor in my voice. He froze, looked at me for a moment, then replied, "Listen, that was a long time ago. I've changed. Please don't make a tragedy out of it." I nodded, but inside I was boiling. I realized that the trust built over years had collapsed. My head was full of questions. Why did he hide all this? What else hasn't he told me? How many more secrets does he keep? The next day, I started verifying the information. I looked at online court archives, news, mentions of his past. Everything matched. Alex really was involved in several criminal stories, but outwardly he seemed like an ordinary person, my friend who supported me in tough times. The more I learned, the more I realized I don't really know this person. All the memories, conversations, and laughter, everything was built on lies. And now I faced a choice: confront or leave it as is. That evening, I sat alone, holding the documents. I reread the dates, charges, signatures. My heart pounded so hard it seemed the neighbors could hear it. I tried to understand what would happen next. Could I ever look at Alex as a friend again? Or was our friendship now destroyed forever? I understood one thing. The truth had come out and it couldn't be put back. The next day, I couldn't think about anything else. Every detail, every conversation with Alex now seemed fake. I realized that to sort it out, I'd have to gather all the pieces of information myself, not rely on my friend's words. First, I went back to the documents I found in the folder. Court rulings, indictments, police reports, all meticulously compiled, every word confirming that Alex's past wasn't as clean as he tried to show. I started calling mutual acquaintances he had mentioned in passing. Trying to seem calm, I asked questions about his past, studies, work, friends. But every time the conversation turned to old years, people either evaded or hinted that Alex had a few complicated situations it's better not to ask about. The deeper I dug, the more details surfaced. I learned he was involved in fraud with large sums of money, theft of documents, and even administrative offenses that could lead to criminal prosecution. No one wanted to speak directly, but the facts spoke for themselves. One day I came across an old news note in a local newspaper. Young man detained for fraud in a large firm. And when I read the name, it was Alex. I reread the article several times, trying to believe it was a mistake. But the photos, dates, details matched. Everything pointed to his involvement in the crime. I didn't sleep for several nights. Every memory of our joint trips, holidays, conversations now seemed built on lies. I tried to understand. Why did he hide it? Why did he become my friend if he knew the truth could destroy everything? Soon, I decided to act systematically. Gather all documents and evidence. I made copies of court rulings, saved scans of news and old records. Talked to mutual acquaintances carefully without revealing my intentions. I asked them about past years, trying to find confirmations. Find out details of his crimes, dates, places, circumstances. This helped understand how serious the past Alex was hiding. Each new fact intensified the feeling of betrayal. I realized that the person I trusted the most was hiding serious crimes that none of us knew about. But I also understood that mere knowledge of facts wasn't enough. I had to meet him face to face to learn why he did it and what would happen to our friendship now. At the same time, I struggled with internal doubts. Was it worth destroying the friendship based on the past? Maybe he really had changed and was now a different person. These questions tormented me, but I understood one thing: the truth needed to be known to the end. Finally, having gathered all the evidence and verified the facts, I decided it was time for confrontation. But even sitting at home, I couldn't shake the anxiety. What would his answer be? Could I ever trust again a person who had hidden his past for so long? I came to Alex in the evening, holding neatly folded documents. My heart pounded so hard it seemed the neighbors could hear it. I couldn't live in doubt anymore. I needed to hear the truth straight from him. "Alex, we need to talk," I said, trying to stay calm. He looked at me, as if sensing the conversation would be heavy. "What's it about?" he asked cautiously, trying to smile. I laid the papers in front of him. "I know everything, your past, all these cases, courts, charges, you hid it all from me. Why?" For a moment Alex froze. His face paled, his gaze became evasive. "Listen, that was a long time ago," he began quietly, but I interrupted. "Long ago or not, you hid it from me for so many years. How can I trust you after this?" He lowered his eyes, then sighed. "I made mistakes. Yes, I was involved in crime, but that's the past. I tried to leave it behind, become different. I wanted to be your friend, a real friend, not the person I was before. I sat trying to digest what I heard. On one hand, I understood people can change. On the other, how can you build friendship on lies even if he's different now? Alex, you know trust is everything. We've been through so many years together and I thought we were real friends. And now, my voice trembled. How can I be sure you're not hiding anything else? He was silent. Finally, he said quietly, I understand if you don't want to hang out with me anymore, but believe me, I've changed. In that moment, I felt a mix of anger, pain, and regret. Everything that seemed like solid friendship turned out shaky. But at the same time, I saw before me a person who was really trying to change. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I tried to find the right words to express the full range of emotions: betrayal, shock, hurt, and at the same time a desire to understand. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you, I said finally, but I know one thing. I need to understand if I can forgive and move on. Alex nodded. His eyes were filled with genuine regret, and in that moment I realized the truth had destroyed trust, but it also opened a path to choice: destroy the friendship forever or try to start from a clean slate. After the confrontation, I went home deep in thought. I felt betrayal, anger, and confusion battling inside me. All memories of joint trips, holidays, laughter, now seemed like a dark mask hiding someone else's life. The next day I met with Alex again. This time we spoke more calmly, but every word was carefully weighed. I realized I can't just pretend nothing happened, I began. I understand, he replied quietly. I'm ready to accept any decision. I realized I faced a choice: keep the friendship despite the lies or cut all ties to protect myself from possible new betrayals. We decided to gradually resume communication, but with clear boundaries. I explained that trust needed to be earned anew, and that now I'd be more attentive to his words and actions. Alex agreed, understanding that the consequences of his secrets were too heavy to just forget. In the following weeks, I observed his behavior. He really tried to be open, honest, and consistent. I saw that he had changed, that the past was left behind, and this gave hope for restoring the relationship. But along with that, I felt the scar of trust that would never fully heal. Every time I recalled his secrecy, I experienced slight tension, a reminder that people can hide even the scariest secrets. A few months later, we were able to find a new level of communication. We weren't the same as before. Too much had been experienced, too much revealed. But I learned an important lesson. The truth always comes out, and even the strongest relationships are built on honesty. I understood that sometimes you need to face a difficult truth to understand people and yourself. Trust is a fragile thing, easy to lose. But if there's a sincere desire to change, restoration is possible, albeit with caution. This story left a mark on me for life. I no longer take friendship for granted. I became more attentive to people, their pasts, and actions. And perhaps it was this painful truth that made me stronger and wiser. Several months have passed since I learned the truth about Alex's past. I still recall that evening when I first saw the documents revealing his criminal cases and the moment of our confrontation. These events forever changed my perception of friendship, trust, and people in general. I often pondered why Alex hid his past. Maybe he feared losing friends. Maybe he just wanted to start life from a clean slate. But one thing became clear: a person can't fully change the past by hiding it from those who trust them. My friendship with Alex will never be the same, but I learned to value honesty and openness above all. I understood that trust isn't a given, but a process that needs to be cherished and constantly confirmed by actions. Sometimes I had to revisit my memories, those fun evenings, trips, laughter we shared. It was hard to understand what were real emotions and what was a mask to hide the truth. And yet, I realized that true feelings and memories remain, even if overshadowed by a secret. This story taught me another thing. People can change, but their past remains part of their life. We must be ready to accept it if we want to build real relationships. And sometimes the pain caused by revealing a secret becomes a valuable lesson that helps better understand yourself and others. Now looking back, I understand. The truth always comes out. Hiding it means risking the destruction of trust built over years. But if there's a sincere desire to change, there's a chance to restore relationships, even if not immediately. I decided not to hold on to resentment and give Alex a chance to prove he can be an honest friend. But I also learned to be cautious and attentive, not to close my eyes to small signals that might indicate hidden problems. In the end, this story left a mark on me for life. I became more attentive to people, their pasts, and actions. I learned to value honesty and trust, but now I know they're easy to lose and hard to regain. And most importantly, I understood that every person, regardless of past mistakes, deserves a chance for redemption if they're ready to take responsibility for their actions. But friendship built on lies always requires reevaluation, sometimes painful, sometimes salvific.